Hola amigos, I'm here at Community First Village, and right behind me is the first ever hemp home built in Austin, Texas. And I got my good buddy Henry Valles here to help me tell you all about it. What is this hemp house, right? You ask, because it may look just kind of like a stuccoed house with some wood on the wall. And to the casual observer, that may be exactly what it is. But Henry, why don't you grab some of your cool props that you brought today and teach us, educate us a little bit on what the heck goes into a hempcrete wall.
Yeah, so hempcrete or hemp lime construction is essentially a lightweight concrete insulation. And so it's made up of three ingredients. The hemp hurd, which is derived from the woody stalk core of the hemp plants. So this woody core, it's decorticated, the fibers are removed and processed into this hemp hurd.
Awesome.
And then
play with this way.
And then it also is mixed with a lime-based binder and water, and it has a specific formula which you mix these three ingredients. And so the last ingredient is really CO2, which begins the calcification process, turning this into practically into stone. So this becomes your monolithic wall system.
Yeah, that's so cool. So basically these are the ingredients right here, and this behind us ultimately is what you get. Now obviously there are some other components that go into this wall. So some of them that exist are, we do have studs still. So this is a hemp product, so this is not a normal wood stud, but just for kind of reference sake, this wall does have 2x4 studs or 2x6 studs, or can even have 2x12 studs inside it. And basically what happens is you're gonna encapsulate the studs, right, with the hemp. So this is a hemp block. This is not hempcrete, but it's very similar. So kind of just show you a cross section here. It's kind of like you'll have your typical stud, and then it will be encapsulated with hemp, and the hemp is encompassed of these three materials that Henry has brought to us, all mixed up. And as Henry mentioned, it does remove some CO2, which obviously we're in the business of removing nowadays. And so I think, like you said, 10% or so of the CO2 removed from hemp occurs with the drying process of the hemp, and maybe the other 90% or so, and it may not be totally accurate with these numbers, occurs with the actual growth of the hemp, right?
Yes, exactly. Industrial hemp is one of the most carbon sequestering plants that we have. And so the calcification or the curing process of this hempcrete mixture takes up the rest of estimated 10%.
Yeah, so that's kind of what occurs when it's drying. So bamboo is another real big material in terms of carbon sequestration. So both of them are fantastic, and this just compares really nicely. And we're gonna see this more and more in the future. So let's go ahead, and before we jump too much into the topic of some other methodologies of doing hemp construction, let's kind of touch on the finish we see here, and tell me a little bit more about how this finish was achieved and what product we're looking at.
Yeah, so on the project, Brad King, a couple local natural builders, plasters, Brad King and Kirby Fry, helped on putting the exterior natural lime plaster. So what's great about hempcrete, sometimes you need like a screen wall to really catch your plasters like you do with stucco, and you're more technical on the building side of things here. But there you have these granular pockets where a plaster could really grab onto. So a lot of the construction is done when you're finishing hempcrete in the inside and the outside using plasters. So that really helps keep the vapor permeability of the wall system, and then also is a good substrate surface to actually plaster on.
Yeah, so I got to witness some of this, and as he mentioned, there's a huge distinguishing factor between this hempcrete home and pretty much every other wall that I've been part of building here in Austin, Texas, and that is the WRB. So the weather resistant barrier, it can be kind of like your Tyvek, it can be your Zip, it can be all those sorts of things. This wall actually doesn't operate with a weather resistant barrier, which is pretty wild. And when I first heard about that, it kind of had me scratching my head, because I've gone down the rabbit hole of building science for many, many years, and I hadn't really seen anything that kind of was built that way before. And so since then I've learned about some things that that are kind of like a rammed earth and stuff like that. But anyway, the premise is that this system is capable of taking on small amounts of water or housing moisture and actually being able to dry out without having a negative impact on the wall or the wood inside. Is that right?
Yeah, it acts as a moisture regulating wall system.
Right, so it kind of has some hydrostatic buffering properties that are significant. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the lime is one of the key ingredients too that makes that happen, right?
It does, because it acts like the lime is helping calcify this and essentially turning the combination of the hemp, lime, and water into stone.
Right, and so I recall from some of my combos with Matty Mead, he was explaining to me how the lime kind of on a molecular level binds to the hemp hurd. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, so the hemp plant and the hemp hurd has these small little pockets within its wood structure, you would say. And so that mixture, your lime concrete mixture, is able to get into these pockets and then help calcify it. So that really, especially with the high cellulose content that hemp has, it's really helping to bind that together and to calcify it into a stone.
Do you want to fully fill all the pores and pockets of the hemp with the lime water mixture, or do you want to leave some gaps, or how does that work?
Yeah, when you're mixing the hempcrete itself, you just want to make sure that it's mixed well, right? You want to, like you would with certain concrete pours or whatever mixtures you have, you just want to make sure that you're not seeing some dry hempcrete. You want to make sure all of the hemp hurd is coated well.
Right.
And so it gets a little bit more technical on how you would do that. If you would, do you do a dry mix of the hemp hurd with your binder first and then you add the water, or you add the binder and the water together? So, most of the times that we've done it, we do a dry mix and then of the binder, so it's really coated with the hurd, and then you pour in your water as well. So, and then also depends what your goals are, what the type of method of application is, and the curing times that you have as well.
Right. So I guess kind of what I was getting at too is the thermal resistance factor. So your R value, right? From what I understand, and kind of at first I thought maybe you want to have everything like as fully coated and filled and kind of more dense as possible, but Henry elaborated and was able to explain to me when we first came on this project, and then Maddie since then, that you actually do benefit from having air gaps, and so that increases your R value, correct?
It does, and this is debatable in the hemp building space, but initially when I started getting into this, going to the hemp building workshops and really learning about this, when you have your wall cavity, right, you have your studs in the middle, you have your boards framed up to build up the hempcrete, we would really pack the edges well when we're tamping it down, but we always try to keep the middle a little bit fluffy. So the larger the air gaps, the higher R value that you have.
Right.
There's a school of thought where you just tamp the whole thing down quite a bit, and as long as you have enough width in terms of your wall system, then you're going to get the R value that you're going to get anyways.
Right.
And so one of the methods which we'll get into is hempcrete blocks, or those are compact very strongly. So it's really about how wide that wall system's going to be so you can achieve the R value that you're looking for.
Gotcha, great answer. So what are some of the widths that you see with hempcrete walls?
It all depends about the climate and the region that you're in. And so if you're having to achieve a certain R value for your building code or the climate that you're in, typically it's about 2 to 2.5 R per inch. So, we've seen anywhere from, 8 inches up to 16 inches. In colder, more humid climates like in the Northwest or in Europe like England and Ireland, where they have a lot of moisture but very cold, they have much thicker wall systems.
Right.
So here in Texas, and that's something that we need to start to discover as we build with this product, especially with the vast different climates that we have in the United States. What is the ideal wall width and structure for hempcrete in your area?
100%, because there are pros and cons to having a real wide wall, and I can tell you firsthand from facilitating design build projects with clients. Clients are super concerned with square footages, especially when you're on these urban infill lots. So sometimes having a really massive wall is not ideal. So like you said, I think kind of finding that sweet spot is going to be really beneficial to everybody in that particular region. And I think it's kind of like with the passive house scenario. Thicker walls a lot of times going to be better in terms of performance and many other health and comfort factors. And so that needs to kind of be balanced on the scale with square footage and clients' other needs, and also the footprint of the house and all that sort of stuff. So with this particular one, we didn't go super massive. I believe we used 2x6 studs, if I'm not mistaken, and then maybe we captured another 2 inches or so on either side. Was that about right?
No, I think we did 2x4s on this, and then we did about 6.5 inches thick. And so we had a couple inches on each side of the wall stud.
Right. And how we did this too, so just to kind of make it clear for everybody, this was very similar to like a poured concrete wall where we actually put up forms on either side of our studs, right? So, you know, kind of let's say these are our studs, and we put up some forms on either side, and then we dropped in this hempcrete in lifts. I think the lifts were probably about 6 to 8 inch lifts or so. Is that about right?
Yeah, it's something like that. Okay. I would probably say closer to about a foot. We did about a foot
I may be
each
mistaken on
section,
that.
and then we would go up from there. So I'm not a rammed earth building expert, but I see it kind of in that regard. You're building it in layers as you go along.
Right, and aesthetically, you can gain some really cool, like architecturally significant benefits based on how these layers look, because believe it or not, you don't have to conceal and cover up hempcrete all the time. There are certain circumstances where you could leave it exposed on the outside, like if you had an extremely large overhang, or even on the inside. Many times if you're going to do that, and correct me if I'm wrong, you may want to kind of gel it up with some sort of like clearish substance just to kind of make sure that it's not flaking off. But theoretically, you could utilize that in a visual manner if you wanted to, correct?
Absolutely, you could. But for performance, what the lime plaster and coating really does, it's kind of helps cover any small missed spots and gets those gaps that you really want to really give you that final strong coating. For the wall system itself.
So Matty Mead with Hempcrete, whom Henry introduced me to, and he's a wealth of knowledge. He taught me a little bit more about lime, and it kind of got me going down a path of European construction, which I'd like to hear you speak to a little bit more in a moment. But he was like, Doug, this lime is just such a cool product and substance, and it has been around, and it has been the secret sauce to forever building for a long time. So once I went down that path, I realized that there was nothing new about this lime material, and it literally is ancient. And it's very possible, like pyramids and even stuff like super old, and I may be misspeaking slightly here, but many old forms of construction have utilized lime, and that stuff has pretty much dried hard as a rock and kind of formed a rock-like substance, right?
Absolutely, and also it's helped mitigate the moisture of those structures. So when hemp building and hempcrete kind of had its renaissance in France in the 1970s, they were trying to find solutions to help preserve their old buildings without deteriorating, and a lot of the time some of the Portland cement had caused some of those issues. So they went more with a natural aggregate, which is the hemp herd, and that lime-based binder to help preserve these buildings longer and more sustainably. And also what's great about lime is we used to have a bunch of natural cement and lime quarries in different regions of the world, right? You can find your natural regional natural cement here in Austin. We have a company called Austin Lime Works. They do hydrated lime and hydraulic lime that we've actually used with some mixtures and some projects here locally. And then also you have your natural pozzolans, your clays. Here in Texas we have a lot of clays. So the pozzolans are also part of the formula to help set this mixture more quickly.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I didn't even realize that.
So, it's also regionalizing the supply chain, right? And lime is a huge aspect of that.
So back to the porosity of this wall. This lime plaster, basically kind of what I get out of it is it sheds bulk water very well, but it does allow for vapor to transmit through and back out of this wall in a way that is very prohibitive of causing problems with this wall. Basically what I'm trying to say is this wall doesn't remain saturated for long periods of time. It has a very quick ability to dry back out once vapor passes through, and also it just frankly allows vapor to pass in and out both ways. Is that more or less correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that's so important, especially in the region that we're in here in Austin, Texas, and in Central Texas, and the ability to regulate the moisture of a home. So, you know, if we build more with standard construction, then we have our HVAC systems and our dehumidifiers that are helping to do that regulation. This is a little bit more of a natural approach of doing that.
Yeah, and one of the ways that you can kind of even add to that is you can use things such as mineral paints if you're going to do any sort of painting. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to prohibit any sort of like actual seal that is blocking the ability of that vapor to drive in and drive back out, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's why these plasters are such good ideas. You can also plaster on the inside of your wall. And something I want to mention as well is that Henry's always brought to my attention is that you can basically go with an alternative cladding on the wall. And this is kind of a cool example of doing that, right?
Yeah, so this was more of a featured, design aspect. Interesting part of it, it was also sealed with a product called Hemp Shield. So, great product. They've done some studies on it on the Oregon State University. But yeah, it's exterior cladding, and to what you were speaking to, if you wanted to have more of a brick cladding or hardy plank,
something more traditional, seeing, right?
You can still do Hempcrete. It just depends how you go through the design process of it, and make sure you have your furring strips to allow that vapor to come out and not being trapped like
he's saying put on a rain screen like we do with all of our cladding, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, awesome. Okay. Fantastic. Well, I'm super happy with what I see here. This has been a few years now, right, that this has been in place?
Yeah,
more or less?
I would probably say we're approaching 4 years now.
Okay, 4 years, guys. So this house looks awesome. The wood looks awesome. And I got to talk with the inhabitant today, and he was super happy with his whole experience here. And so I think it's been a huge success. So I want to take that as a jump off point, and I want to go into some of the other opportunities to build with hemp that may not be this, because I want to also hit on real briefly, guys, some of the negatives of doing hempcrete construction, and then we'll kind of veer into some other routes and other approaches. So why don't you just tell me firsthand, what would you say is negative about going with this hempcrete method here?
Yeah, so with this method, we did a cast in place.
Right.
So that's where, like you mentioned, we formed up the wall boards, and that's very labor intensive and took some time. So there's also a few other hempcrete installation methods. So one of them is actually hempcrete block. So you kind of just treat it like cinder blocks. You get your natural lime-based plaster binder, and you kind of put them in place within your wall studs like you would cinder blocks, and then you would even plaster on top of that.
Let me pause you on that one for a second. So I've done a little bit of exploring because I was pretty excited about this too, because I just liked the fact that it was a little bit quicker and a little bit less labor intensive, as we spoke about. And don't get me wrong, I love this wall. I think this is awesome, and I highly consider doing one of these walls for my own house in the future.
Yeah.
But this is neat because it allows you like multiple opportunities. One is you can actually do more traditional wall construction. So you could actually go, like a lot of my homes where I use zip sheathing and that whole sort of methodology, you can do a traditionally framed stud wall, and then you can put a weather resistant barrier on it, and you can actually put this on the outside or on the inside, and you can still gain a lot of benefits of utilizing hemp. There's many holistic benefits to it. And so that was kind of neat. Now you can also make this a structural wall by utilizing rebar. And would you mix cement with it, or would it be lime, or how would you do that? Are you familiar with that?
For what again?
For making this into a structural wall.
The hempcrete blocks? Yeah, so they would already be they're ready to be manufactured and cured on site, brought to the construction site that you're at.
Right.
And then you would just install them within the framework and then just mortar them together.
Oh, God.
At that
Okay,
point.
so you're saying inside the framework, right? And actually, I went down another rabbit hole. That's kind of why I'm talking about this. And maybe you haven't gone down this one, but it essentially was utilizing rebar as well and turning this into kind of like a concrete-ish wall with rebar, and then it could actually be structural in that manner. So it's
Yes.
something
Oh,
European,
you're right. Yes. There's a company in Europe called Hemp. And
Right.
so if you wanted to have the structural support that you needed, if you're going multiple stories,
Right.
they do make hempcrete blocks where, they do cut it out, they put the rebar,
Right.
and then you get your overhangs and your corner structural support with the concrete that you need.
Yeah,
You're
so if you
absolutely right.
wanted to use this without using a traditionally framed wall or a traditional WRV, that's kind of what I'm getting
Yeah.
at. Awesome. Okay, so
So that's a method. There's a company out of Massachusetts called Hempstone that's done a lot of projects with hempcrete blocks. Another method is sprayed applied hempcrete.
I love that one. That one's really neat because again, this took a while and it wasn't the fastest. And when I looked at the spray applied hempcrete, it looked a lot more rapid fire. Is that right?
Much rapid fire, probably takes about 2/3 less of the time, much less labor. One of the experts here in the United States, Cameron McIntosh with Amer Chambre, based out of Pennsylvania, has been doing incredible projects across the United States. So, you essentially, there's a couple methods. The European methods that they've had is you have the hemp hurd and it's meeting the water and the binder at the nozzle when you're spraying it. But there's a newer technology called the Urizi from an inventor, Damien, out of France, that's brought it to the United States with Cameron. And you're spraying already mixed hempcrete, which has been kind of new to the fold and to the technology.
Wow.
So what really helps out with that is the expediting of the construction process. And so you kind of, like shotcrete, you're kind of spraying it into layers as your wall system builds up.
Totally.
And then you kind of just scrape it off to get it even, and then you get ready to put your plaster on that as well. So, and there's been projects where, you have a combination of these. You have, some hempcrete blocks to help with the time, and then you spray apply those, or you can do hempcrete blocks and cast in place. It just depends what the client's looking for, design-wise, performance-wise, those types of things.
Got you. So why would you personally choose one over the other of the spray applied versus the cast in place?
Yeah, it just depends. So for efficiency and cost, I'm gonna go either hempcrete blocks or most likely sprayed applied. The one thing about like if you wanted a featured wall or nice nice beautiful layers like a rammed earth, and you would go cast in place.
Kind of that earthworm effect.
Yeah,
which is so pretty.
It's gorgeous. So it really just depends.
Is it practical to show that wall off though? I mean, in reality, is it? Like, tell me how you would do it. If you were going to.
I think if I wanted to show off a wall, with construction, it's all about time, cost, and efficiency,
Sure.
right? So I would probably want to do hempcrete blocks or spray most of my house, and then if I wanted to feature a wall, I would probably just do that one cast in place.
And how would you finish that wall, like with the clear coat or whatever you would use?
Yeah, I'm not sure what's out there in terms of clear coats. I have seen
like,
some
would
things.
you, or would you just would you be open to leaving it like that?
Yeah, I would probably want to protect and clear coat one because I have a kid and going to have more, and they're probably going to scratch that thing off, so I want to protect it as much as possible. I believe I've seen some construction companies in Australia be able to do a clear coat, so that's something I would want to look into and find out, like, hey, what is that exact product and method that you're able to keep it exposed but still
I'm thinking a very
coated.
vapor open type clear
Exactly.
coat, something along those lines. And I'm guessing too that it would probably be acceptable in many circumstances to just leave it uncoated, and I've seen that with some rammed earth walls that, it just is the rammed earth, and you could probably go pick at it if you wanted to.
I've seen,
but people don't really, and it looks cool, and I think that actually could be acceptable practice as well.
Yeah, I've seen builders like Sergey with Hempire. He builds out in Ukraine, and he's left an exposed hempcrete wall before they even put the plaster on for a couple winters in a row, and it was totally fine. So also places I've visited in Italy that are just totally exposed to the elements, and they're still holding their structure and integrity. So it's a very resilient, insulation wall system.
Yeah, I personally, and maybe I'm a little out here with this concept, I would consider just plastering one side, and maybe for me it would be maybe the outside and then maybe leaving that inside totally open so I could look at it, and or having just significant overhangs, like really large ones, and having the outside the visual, because I just love that earthworm effect so much. It's so beautiful. And then maybe having both sides just look like that and just kind of leaving it be, and then just playing it by ear and seeing if it was problematic at all, if it started flaking off or anything like that. Then maybe I would consider going over with the plaster, but I might just kind of pause on it and let that decision work itself out.
It'll be a great test case for you to check that out. For
Absolutely.
Sure.
So tell us a little bit more about some of the other products you have here that are hemp related, please.
Yeah, so
all right, guys, this video got super long, but we had so much killer content in it, and this whole hemp subject is just full of details that we decided to just pause this video right here, and we will be back next week with part 2 of Building with Hemp. Adios, amigos.